Weapons are vital in Dying Light 2, and therefore it is important to ensure you are using the best weapons possible. In this video, I'm going to run through some of the best weapons you can get in Dying Light 2, how to acquire them, and even suggest some weapon mods that you need to try out. But before we get into that, I want to let you guys know that I do have another YouTube channel where I upload some more content, mainly focused around Dead by Daylight and other horror games. So if that's something you're interested in, link will be in the description. Getting into the video. First of all, one key thing to note is that Dying Light 2 uses loot scaling for when you find new weapons in the world. It essentially means that as you play more and your level increases, so will the base damage of weapons found in the world. This means that technically, if you leveled up high enough, you could find weapons that actually deal more damage than some of the weapons on this list, but nevertheless, these weapons are still incredibly more powerful than your average weapon. Another key thing to keep in mind is the tier scale that affects all of the weapons in Dying Light 2. The scale goes from common all the way up to artifact. And while a higher tier weapon may not necessarily have higher damage than a lower tier weapon, it does come with some other benefits. The tiers determine how many perks a weapon has and how many upgrade slots the weapon can have. Generally, artifact weapons will have 3 perks, unique weapons will have 2, and rare weapons will just have 1. And as for upgrades, it's a little less consistent, but generally artifact and unique tier weapons can have anywhere from 0 to 4 upgrade slots, but rare tier weapons and below can't be upgraded at all. And finally, before we get into the exact weapons themselves, it is also important to remember to match your armor set to your favorite weapon type. For example, if you prefer to use one-handed weapons, you should be using the brawler type armor. This is because, among other bonuses, matching weapons to their corresponding armor type increases the damage of those weapons. So, as well as brawler type for one-handed weapons, tank type armor increases the damage of two-handed weapons, ranger type armor for ranged weapons, and medic type armor to increase parkour attack damages. You could of course mix and match your armor to increase all weapon damage slightly across the board, but I would personally suggest committing your armor type to match with whatever your favourite weapon type is, because that way you get the most benefit and increase your potential damage much more. But now, getting into the weapons themselves. First off, one of the best weapons you can get in Dying Light 2 is the Heavy Duty Axe. The Heavy Duty is an artifact tier weapon. It's a two-handed axe with 3 upgrade slots available. So not only has it got great base damage, but it can also be upgraded to be more durable and more powerful. The only downside to this weapon is that in order to unlock it, you do have to complete the final story mission, which means you'll only actually get use out of it once you've finished the main storyline. The next weapon is the Paperclip Bow. The Paperclip is actually a rare tier weapon, but its base damage makes it potentially the second best ranged weapon in the game, the first coming later in this list. Having any kind of ranged weapon in Dying Light 2 is always a great strategy, as it's extremely useful for taking out enemies without drawing too much attention, as well as providing a method of dealing damage while your health may be too low to take a melee fight confidently. The Paperclip can be found in Lei-Wan's apartment during a mission titled The Shoe. The only thing you may need to keep in mind is that you will have to craft arrows, but fortunately they are relatively easy to craft, only requiring some scrap and some feathers. The next weapon on this list is another two-handed weapon, the Enzo Katana. The Enzo Katana is an artifact tier weapon which can be found in underwater loot drops in the south of the central loot area. The Enzo Katana is incredibly effective against many enemies due to its long blade, and because of loot scaling, if you can acquire the Enzo in the end game, you're going to have one of, if not the best melee weapon in Dying Light 2. Now, the best ranged weapon in Dying Light 2 is by far the Peacekeeper Crossbow. The PK Crossbow is a semi-auto ranged weapon with insanely good base damage. It unfortunately cannot be upgraded with mods, but you can craft special types of bolts, such as Lacerating or Toxic, to add extra effects to your shots. Bolts, like arrows, just require scrap and feathers, with the special bolts also requiring an extra item in order to craft them. To unlock the PK Crossbow, you will have to assign at least 4 territories to the Peacekeepers. This is why earlier I also suggested the paperclip bow, as it provides a good alternative to the PK crossbow. Perhaps you're choosing not to side with the Peacekeepers in your particular playthrough. However, if you do just want the best weapon possible, you should choose them in order to get this weapon. But finally, the best weapon you can build and upgrade in Dying Light 2 is Aiden. More specifically, his feet. At the end of the day, Aiden's kicking abilities don't have any durability like other weapons, so using his air kick or drop kick, etc. can be a great backup for if all of your weapons break, or better yet, it can actually help you to conserve your weapon durability before they break. But they don't even have to be your backup. Obviously, ideally, you would have a weapon, but unlocking all of Aiden's kick abilities and actually using the environment around you, such as maybe some spike walls or some barrels, can actually be a really extremely effective way to fight your enemies. Say you're on a rooftop, you kick a zombie, it falls off the edge. You know, not your problem anymore. It can also be used to stun maybe a howler so you don't get any more zombies. The only thing you do need to make sure is that you're not drop kicking into a massive horde of enemies, because you're still going to take damage while on the floor. But otherwise, and especially if you're only one-on-one and there's not really much of an other threat other than this one enemy, make sure to use Aiden's combat abilities, especially to just save durability at the end of the day. But now that you guys know all of the best weapons to find and use in Dying Light 2, I'm going to quickly run through some of the perks and upgrades you want to be looking for on these weapons. The most important weapon perks to look for are the ones that deal extra damage either against humans or infected. This is because ideally you could then equip one weapon of each on your quick bar, so you can then switch between them accordingly based on who you're fighting. Another good weapon perk are those which increase power attack damage, as power attacks can be extremely effective in dealing massive amounts of damage to either a crowd or even a stronger boss enemy. And as for upgrade mods, you can find many different mods available, ranging from increasing a weapon's crit rate to increasing its durability. Personally, I've found 3 or 4 mods that I like to use across the board, which improve weapons in a variety of ways. First up is the Spark mod. The Spark mod is a tip mod which applies the enemy with a shock effect on a critical hit, but not only can it affect the enemy you hit, but it can also have a chance to spread the shock to other nearby enemies. This can be then very useful for stuff like crowd control against many enemies, as it can deal damage and stun. Next is the Reinforcement Grip mod. It pretty much says what it does on the tin. The Reinforcement mod is the only mod that increases the durability of your weapons, so make sure to use it on all of your favourites to keep them around for longer. And finally, the Catapult mod for the shaft is a fun upgrade as it's used to blast enemies backwards when activated. It's great for crowd control, of course, but also extremely effective for rooftop fights, as you can simply just launch your enemies right off the edge. But yes, that right there is a list of all the best weapons you can acquire in Dying Light 2 and how to find them, as well as some mods for you to also try out. If there are any weapons you think I've maybe missed, feel free to let me know down in the comments. Hopefully you found this video useful, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing. But yeah, thanks for watching, have a good one, peace. I've been trying to find a way to make